This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 436 for Wednesday, March 16th, 2022. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week, Brockett Vola is back. You can find him at TheCatVolver on all the social media that matters. Welcome back, my friend.
Hey, thanks. It's weird when you listen to an entire episode. I listened to y'all's last week, obviously, because I stealth bombed it. And it's weird to then come back because I know we have show notes and stuff, but then there's also like this bad sense of like wanting to now comment on commentary. And then you're like, I think that's the new society you're in, where sometimes you're like, what was the original topic? I'm just talking about your comments, like not in a bad way or good way. It just stimulates conversation. And that's like what we're all about. And I've always been, my wife has always pointed this out because there was a mutual friend of ours, more on Laura's side. And he thought like I was like really getting after him about some post on, which is ironic because we're kind of get into important movies, quote unquote, versus like unimportant movies later on in the show when I do pass or play. But you're just talking about like basically superhero movie fatigue. And I kind of poked it a little bit because growing up without superhero movies and the best you got was a really crappy Dolph Lundgren Punisher film. And then finally, Keaton's Batman kind of was great, and then it was bad again. And anyway, like I was kind of like a little bit more riled, but I came in a little hot, but then, whatever. But then privately, he was like, I thought you were really mad at me, all these sort of things. I was like, you don't understand. If you read my like 5-dude text chain, we just like eviscerate each other sometimes on like pop culture opinions, but then like in a way that's like, another one of my friends to this day, and it drives me and my friend Jeremy and Adam absolutely insane. He's like, oh yeah, Captain America Civil War, I gave it the same grade as Batman versus Superman. We're like, what? And he's like, well, blah blah. He lists his reasons, and you can see in like a fractured, terrible mind how maybe that makes sense. Like to him, he prefers the superheroes to not have as much crossover, all these different things, but he didn't grow up a massive superhero fan. So I get it. That's fine. Like he's more into super spies. So he's always been more like forgiving of like the Mission Impossible movies and that sort of stuff. But to me, I was like, to this day, he brings it up, and now he brings it up as like a, yeah, well, it's good, about Captain America level. And we're like, oh, best. And I know my friend Jeremy, I know if I ever want to get him riled up, I bring up the movie Looper because he's such a time travel guy. And I'll get to time travel again in the episode, but in this episode. But anyway, I know I can poke him so bad by bringing up Looper. And Rian Johnson, because of The Last Jedi and how he feels about that, which is very negative. I just bring up Rian Johnson to him, and he's like, well, it's fine. Brick's great. Knives Out, great. But, the rest of it is just, whatever. Throw it away. And I'm like, so anyway, you just know those things about your friends. You know their little things, and I know most people can probably jab me if they come at Superman or I'm sure there's some other buttons to push.
I'm trying to think about what my buttons would be. I imagine it's probably, the defense of the superhero films, like the Marvel stuff. People that don't like them and whatever, and I don't necessarily try to convince people, but I will certainly for example, I've been trying to get my stepfather Barry to watch the Captain America kind of storyline. I don't think he would enjoy all of the Avengers. He's not a big sci-fi guy. He much prefers like historical drama, and that knowledge of historical drama was how I convinced them to watch The Lord of the Rings. I bought them a DVD set, not like the big extended box set, just like a general DVD set. And I gave it to my parents years and years and years ago when they were still living in Boston. And I told Mom, I said, look, just tell Barry to give it a chance. Yes, it's a fantasy movie, but honestly, it's more of like an imagined history than it is like a swords and sword. Like there's swords and sorcery, but it's really more about, a historical adventure. And because of how like deep the history is in Tolkien's world, and Barry was into it. They really enjoyed it, and he surprised himself. And I think because he likes like World War II movies and stuff like that, that he would get a kick out of the Captain America arc. I don't know if he would necessarily watch all the other films, but like First Avenger, the Winter Soldier, Avengers. I guess not in that order, but like Avengers, the Winter Soldier, and then Civil War on through. Like I feel like he would probably like the soldier part of that.
Sure.
Because ultimately like Thanos is just a big Nazi.
Yeah, no.
It's sci-fi, but like that's what he is, right?
The Captain America mentality is one that is ingrained in a lot of Americana, of like when originally, now we all know globally in some circles, the United States is considered more of a bully than it is a defender of the weak. But that was very much the flag they toted for the longest time, was like, we were bullied, so we went out and we made the best country in the world that supports everybody's voice, yada, 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 all these ideals. But then, they were like, that's what we're going to do. And sort of this whole Monroe doctrine. And they had all these thoughts of like how they would help the world from big bullies or whatever. Well, now they're established enough to be their own bully. But yeah, it's sort of a mindset that I think very much resonates still with older generations. And geopolitically, stuff aside, I think most people can agree that when it comes to bullies, we don't like them. So if you have a guy like Cap with his "I can do this all day" thing, that can be something that's incredibly positively stirring and triggering within somebody, as opposed to Tony Stark's fall from grace redemption story, which not as many people, I think, of an older generation necessarily like are drawn to as much as I think maybe our generation is.
And I also know that movies like Guardians of the Galaxy and characters like Peter Quill are like they're not going to resonate with Barry at all. Not to mention like Talking Tree, he's out. Like he's just like, no, just I don't want to watch this.
But you just got to watch Lord of the Rings. Talking Tree.
I know, I realize that, but I think it's because it's a main character or Talking Raccoon, like all that kind of stuff. Sure. I think is probably
Tolkien is ingrained in history. I mean, like he was a major, So there's a purpose to a lot of what he's doing satirically a little bit too.
Oh, of course. I mean, like there's lots of World War I, references and all that kind of stuff. And is it 1 or 2? It's 1, right? It's
World War I, I believe
that he references.
More, but I think he was more of a contemporary of 2.
Yeah. Anyway, last week you mentioned that you wrote in, you kind of like did a shadow bomb with the email, which I thought was very funny. And Alistair and I both talked about our animated series Mount Rushmore. So I want to know yours, but before we get into yours, I want to know what your gut reaction was to our response.
So first off, I want to give Alistair a lot of props for giving me props, because it's very rare somebody compliments my asinine rules I make for making lists, because he was like, he makes it so like almost delightfully infuriating, to paraphrase a bit. And it's true, because I think part of the fun, I think we're in this, like you said, pre-show, off air, there's so many podcasts now, there's so many ways to rank things, social media, hot takes, all this stuff. So everyone has an opinion, and it's a lot more popular to do the high fidelity top 5 type of thing. So, Mount Rushmore, not necessarily an original idea. So you have to kind of make things fresh. And for me, I'm such a nerd about rules. And so I appreciated that he called that out. Y'all's lists were actually a little bit more surprising than I thought. Y'all pulled so much more from your childhood than I thought you would, in particular, Joel, just because I thought, with the animator background, you'd be a lot more like the shiny new thing, like focusing a lot more of the fresher shows that were out, things like Arcane that we had mentioned. But per the rules, which I knew, you wouldn't be able to use something like Arcane. You wouldn't be able to use possibly some other shows that haven't been wrapped. But anyway, it was interesting, and it was really cool to hear you guys call back to some shows that I do remember. I think Joel, I know you were basically a generation before me, so Gummy Bears would have been like when I was really like a little toddler. But it was interesting to hear you throw Gummy
Yeah.
Bears in there. Like that was my first one. I was like, whoa! I would have never like if you gave me 1,000 shots at cartoons, I don't think I would have hit Gummy Bears for you. So that was a big one. That was cool. But yeah, you guys hit on some of my favorites. Of course, one of yours, Joel, ended up being one of my top four. But oh, and the other thing I wanted to give major props to again to Alistair. I guess we're just shaking hands from past and future. High five. Is he brought up Reboot, which almost made my list, and
Mm-hmm.
to this day is this. I was talking to my friend, and that's why I emailed you guys because I just popped in my head when I was talking to him. I was like, "Do you know that cartoon when you first realized every episode wasn't just episodic, where the person just didn't solve whatever problem it was, whether it was like they forgot their school lunch or they had to defeat a villain, but there was an actual from the start of a season to the end of a season, something changed and it changed that couldn't be undone. And if you started to watch the series later on, you would be lost to some degree. And the show that I remember that doing for me was Reboot. Now, I know X-Men the animated series kind of was like that because it actually followed comic book arts, but to me, I kind of discredited that because I mean they kind of went into it knowing like, well, we're gonna do this, this, and this. But you could do that. I mean, I definitely know I missed a lot of two-parters and I was like, I'm lost. Who's Cable? What is Bishop? I don't understand. Um, but for me, Reboot was that show. And I remember watching all the way into the third season and just being like, wow, like I don't understand computers. So all of this is still kind of cool. And now looking back, obviously some of that tech just doesn't hold up, but still the baseline of it is still really, really resonates. And yeah, Bob and Enzo, Dot. I think it's, oh man, I'm going to massacre her name.
Hexadecimal was the villain that I remember the most.
Hexadecimal. I mean, Megabyte was
Megabyte, of
Tony
course. Yeah.
J. I mean, epic. Lord Frollo voicing. But Hexadecimal, yeah, was so delightfully like you never know what's going on. The only reason it didn't make my list was because I did track down eventually back in college. They had the fourth season, and it wrapped up. What happened at the end of season 3? Which you could, the way season 3 ends with them kind of like standing in profile and them like posing and it saying reboot, it could be a series end, which I took at the time. So when I found this DVD at the time, it was like Virgin Superstore. I was like, what the hell is Reboot? What is this? And it was the fourth season, in which they wrap up, if you have any familiarity with the series, this major virus. But then at they wrap up that idea, and then they went to another idea, which was really cool if they had continued it. But the way it ended was a cliffhanger. And I can't allow myself to love a series that ends on a bad cliffhanger. That's like
Mm-hmm.
glaringly like bad, as in like villain wringing their hands. I'm setting the table for the next season. Then it ends. Like if it's like fade to black, like I don't love the ending, but it's an ending that's different. But this was not that. So reboot was off my list, but I give major props for that one as well. And I ended up also knocking off Dragon Prince because even though they say it's over, I really have the feeling that they're going to make more. But that would have made my list. I just absolutely love Dragon.
Oh, did they cancel the Dragon Prince? I thought there was going to be
No,
another
that's what I'm
season.
saying. Like, so they said they were done for now, but they would gladly do more. It's kind of in Netflix's hands, and I think they're going to continue to do more Dragon Prince. But from my understanding of the show, the third season was going to allow the creators to be like, this is what we have. This can be it, but there can be more. But if you watch all Dragon Prince, the last little bits really kind of make it seem like there should be more. So
Yeah, I was say I don't remember that having a nice little bow on it from the last time I watched it, but it's been a
yeah.
while, mind you.
Well, I would say the major conflict arc of those first three seasons is completed, but then a character's evolution, in which they can never return from, is what's probably going to be the impetus for future shows or, yeah, future seasons,
Right.
which I think I agree with you. Lends it off. Y'all threw out Darkwing Duck, which of course seminal, just awesome, especially in a superhero starved sort of like childhood. It was Darkwing Duck. It was Batman, Superman the animated series, Powerpuff Girls, the first run. Absolutely love those. I left off My Hero Academia because it will probably never end. Just like One Piece, it'll probably be on for 400 years,
It's
and then it'll
fair.
eventually
Yeah.
be off my list. But if it were to somehow end soon, I think it would be there. And then other animes like Outlaw Star and Trigun were really, really big for me. And Korra, I did not finish Korra. I've only seen 2 seasons. I know I get so much crap for Korra. Korra's like the crap I give you, Joel, for numerous cartoons. But I understand. It's like the skeleton I hide in the far back of my closet so that no one can call me out until this moment. But yeah, I haven't finished Korra, and I really need to, especially since it's all collected.
Did you start season 3 and fall off, or did you just haven't
I
started it
finished
yet?
season 2, and then at the time, it was like I was up to date. 3
Oh, you're up to
started,
date.
and then
Okay.
for some reason I wasn't keeping up with it, and then I just never watched it again. And now that it's all collected, they're all done. It's almost this bad thing, and we talk about this all the time. Your attention is always grabbed by these new shiny things. So my brain, even though I constantly want series that are done, for some dumb reason, I'm like, I'll get to it. It's there. Oh, look at this thing. That's not even finished. It's barely
Mm.
started. So I know it's stupid. I really need to just do it. And then I made myself restart season 2 so I would remember it because I only watched it one time. I did a podcast for season 1, so I remember season 1 like really well. But I restarted season 2, and then I don't know, for some reason I really got bogged down in season 2, and then I just didn't finish my rewatch of that. So I really need to finish Korra, but for that reason, Korra is also another shameful one that's off my list. And the very last one that didn't make my list that I'm deeply I hate myself for is Steven Universe, because that's another show that when I get to my list, it's really not as much about what's important for the world of cartoons. It's just what's more important for me, along with, I also really embrace the quality of elements of it. And but if I had to just make a important cartoons universe, or Mount Rushmore, Steven Universe would be on there. It's really quite great, and even the movie, it's a little tricky because the series ends. There's a movie, and then there's one more series it's all connected, and it's important to see all of it. So you could kind of be like, well, it's not one giant collected thing, but you could watch the original just Steven Universe and be done. Never watch the movie or Steven Universe Future, and still have a good resolution. But I think it's important to watch all of it. So it's that kind of makes it a little tricky. I bend the rules a little bit for another one of my top four that's kind of like that, but Steven Universe was like my fifth. Like they were starting to carve the mountain, and then they were like, "Well, we're not gonna do every president. I mean, there's 40 plus. So what are we doing?" Just all of South Colorado, South Dakota is just nothing but heads, um, made for presidents. But yeah, so my four just ended up being, no surprise, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think most people of a generation agree how important that is, but also how just actually really great it is, and it holds up in a lot of ways. To the point where even after a crappy live action movie, they're going to try and make possibly a crappy live action TV show. We don't know, but we'll see. Cowboy Bebop, which we talked about in the past, that's really important to me. I also think it's just a really great anime. And I don't think it'll be surprise to anybody as I stare yet again at Dipper Pine's Funko Pop that Gravity Falls is also in my top four. But the last one, it's not fibbed because, and I want to give you props, Joel. You turned me on to Inside of You with Mike Rosenbaum, a podcast.
Oh yeah.
I've
Hmm.
been listening to a bunch of it. It's really good. It's definitely not what I expected, even from a standpoint of like people recalling stories of their like work. It's just a lot more of their psychology, which ends up being still really good. But as part of it, Mike Rosenbaum at one point was on Justice League. He's the voice of Wally West the Flash. And in it, when he was talking to the rest of the cast, they sort of qualified Justice League as 4 seasons, even though it was Justice League, Justice League, Justice League Unlimited, Justice League Unlimited. So there was 2 and 2. And that's how they're labeled. But they, as the cast, qualified it as 4 seasons. So I'm giving Justice League the animated series out of the Bruce Timm universe, which builds off of Batman animated series and Superman animated series, which I loved. But I'm not going to give myself credit for that whole continuity or canon. I'll just take Justice League, and a lot of the stories in there I just think are really really good. Justice League Unlimited too for oneers. There's a lot of great ones in there, from The Greatest Story Never Told to Hunter's Moon to I'm blanking on some other ones, but Hereafter. Hereafter was a great one for Superman fans. It's just basically he gets zapped so far in the future with the red sun that he's like literally in a desolate like desert wasteland of Earth. And he's got a beard and Superman has no powers. And he's like building a car to drive across the desert. And it's like this is really weird thing to see Superman doing, but like it was just a really good episode. So but anyway, so that would be my four, with all the caveats I mentioned before. But it is tough. I mean, anytime you're picking favorites, it's just there's going to be those. I never finished certain long runs of shows too. Like technically, Powerpuff Girls and Darkwing Duck, I never like saw all of. So per my rules, I couldn't include them anyway. But still, honorable mention them enough when you're a kid. So yeah, that'd be my four.
I think the first cartoon that I saw that had that throughput storyline that wasn't just wrapped up in each individual episode, or if there was something that was wrapped up in each individual episode, there was like another arc happening behind the scenes, and that was Gargoyles.
Oh yeah.
And that's where like, characters would be turned to stone and like, that's it. They're done. They're out. Like they're not dead, but they're turned to stone. And then there was like all of the folklore behind it all that I wasn't familiar with. And then got into like, Midsummer's Night Dream type stuff. It was really cool. And I thought that they did a good job of kind of holding my attention, because I would have been older. I would have been, 14 or 15 when that was coming out. And the hard part for me, which you brought up, was remembering something as well animated, or something that was a cool cartoon to watch when I was an animator and studying that kind of stuff. It also just like, well, yeah, but is it a good cartoon? Like just because it looks cool and I was watching it because it was visually pleasing doesn't necessarily mean it was a good story. And that's where I think, like you, Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, like they eke out a lot of modern cartoons for me, because they might be cool, or they might be funny, or they might be like really great looking. But then like, are they the best thing that I've seen overall? No, not really. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Amazing cartoon for Saturday morning. Inventive, funny, really cool designs, great comedic timing, but like it's just a Saturday morning cartoon. It's not nearly as world changing as Avatar, Korra, Gargoyles, and all that kind of stuff for me. Gummy Bears had a throughput as well. Not necessarily every season, but certainly later seasons they had like an ongoing story, which I thought was cooler than most at the time in the 80s anyway.
Yeah.
So moving on into what we have been watching, did you want to start with the film, or do you want to start with Pass or Play?
We could do Pass or Play as like knock them out. So we could start with the film.
I will defer to you because I didn't finish it. I started it. That film is Turning Red, released on Disney Plus last Friday, I think. I don't think they did a theatrical release. I think it was just every advertisement that I saw for it was straight to Disney
Which
Plus.
is a shame, I think. But I think they did the same with Luca. I don't think Luca made it out to theater.
No, Luca was a direct to Disney Plus as well. These are Pixar films. So I don't have a lot of nice things to say because I stopped watching it because I wasn't enjoying it. So like where are you with it in terms of your impressions of Turning Red?
So Amy kept seeing like ads for it, basically, showing up on things. I would ask for it, and we're like, it's not out yet. It's not out yet. And so it was the first film I think like she really knew of its existence and was waiting for. So finally, when it came out that day, we put it on. And usually the very first time she ever sees a film, she'll sit for the whole thing. Like I think last week we did the first Incredibles and the Incredibles 2, and she did first run of those. And then eventually it becomes like,
nice.
I want to see this part, or she leaves after about 30 minutes and then comes back to it after playing for a bit and watches a little bit of this thing or that thing, which you don't realize as an adult, though. There are like Pixar films are amazing, but other than a few, even Toy Story at times, like we're laughing at like Woody and Buzz talking, but it's still Woody and Buzz talking for like 2 or 3 minutes. And to a young child, it's not necessarily super engaging. So Turning Red definitely is not like Emmy's getting like 50% of it. It's a coming of age story, very much so. This young girl, Mylin Lee or Mai, is growing up in Toronto, Canada. And basically is the daughter of two Asian American parents and the whole dichotomy of what it means to be a daughter and that sort of social tradition. She's very much, you know, not beloved. She's very much respectful of her mother to a fault, and she's turned 13. So of course she's hitting this puberty thing, and what that means for her, what that means for her relationship with her mother, and what that means for her relationship with her friends, and also her body. And some of the humor of this is that it manifests itself in this family long her mother, to quote it, calls it an inconvenience of this red panda thing coming out. So basically, my one night wakes up and she wakes up in the next morning and she's this giant red panda. Like red pandas, if you're familiar, you Google them. They're small, cute, but she's a big one. This like Hulk size, like 7-footer, like 300 pounds, 400 pound type thing. So just to navigate that a little bit in her life and what that means for her relationships and whatnot. And it takes place in 2002. So it's interesting now that we've reached a point where like films that are coming out, but now are projected back in time are in the 2000s. Cause in your head, I think, Joel, you think of 2000s like, oh, that's contemporary. It's not. It's like it's 20 years ago. So like that's like how people who grew up in the 80s must felt about like 80s, like Back to the Future being like, oh, the 80s? It's like 1985, that was like yesterday, and it's like 1999. So yeah, so anyway, 2002, so boy bands are still a big thing, and so my and her friends are really obsessed with this one called Four Town, even though there's 5 people in the band. I thought that was a nice little touch. It's Pixar, so there's so many different layers to it. There's jokes at every level, and there's a lot of heart and a lot of characterization that I think is really important. um Now I will say again, Emmy is a little bit young to really grasp a lot of the puberty stuff, a lot of the importance of some of the stuff being discussed as far as the development of your mental and physical changes. And also, there's a lot between Mai and her mother, that relationship that only really is super surface that a young child could get. It's very much still, I think, a film that's more important for preteens and older. It resonates, obviously, probably a lot more too, with maybe a female identifying dynamic, possibly because of the puberty sides of physical changes as well. But, overall, I just thought it was really great. I am a father of 2 girls, so, um, there's a lot of that drew me in, but still, I think and I haven't seen Luca, all the way through, only bits and pieces, and Emmy's scared of it, so whatever she saw in that first
No,
watch, she was
really?
like, "No, I'm
Wow.
out." So we haven't revisited Luca's, I don't know, but it seems like in a lot of ways, like Inside Out, a lot of these, Pixar coming of age films, they have a lot of great specificity to them, so, like, they can hit like a like an arrow point, like Brave, on a certain type of relationship, and I think it drives really hard and home to those people. Like, I think I don't want to be super generic, but I felt like a lot of my male identifying friends are drawn so hard to the Toy Story franchise. And I think that's because as a boy, you put so much of your emotions into the physical toys and you act out your feelings through that. So Toy Story was
Right.
hugely impactful for us. Whereas I have a lot of friends that were like deeply affected by Nemo. And like at the time, I thought Nemo was gorgeous and was okay. Well, not okay, but good. But it just didn't impact me. Now, as an adult with a child, Nemo has a lot more resonation or resonates a lot more. So I think there's a lot of elements to that. But as far as like just a good, solid movie, I mean, Pixar just, I think in general has done really good. Um, Cars franchise aside, which again is probably the easiest thing for really young kids to see, um, uh, and is probably lacking the most depth. And I haven't really seen The Good Dinosaur, but I've heard very mediocre things. Outside of that, I think Turning Red continues to fulfill that sort of Pixar promise of really good character driven, really well characterizations. A lot of this stuff is really well done in it. I can understand some people come into it thinking it's one thing, perhaps, and it being something different because it's far more of a relationship between your friends and your mother story than even I thought. Because I, for some reason, I thought because she's turning into Red Panda, it was going to be a little bit more like boisterous. Like there's a lot of humor to it, and they play up a lot of that transformation stuff really well. But anyway, so yeah, I really, really liked it. I really enjoy it. I highly recommend it, just overall. But I do think it'll hit the hardest if you have a child, or perhaps you have experienced through your own lens or the lens of a child or a friend or something, the experience of being a tween, becoming a teen, becoming a young woman, and what that means for all the relationships you have, even with yourself. So I think that makes the movie even a little bit more rich.
I think that's probably why I ended up bailing on it after the first 40 minutes or so. I mean, I was also a little bit tired watching it after dinner last night. So, like, I had some stuff to do before I went to bed. So I kind of checked to see how much longer do I have in this? It's like, oh gosh, I have like an hour of left of this. It's like, I'm not watching the whole thing. Regardless of whether I was enjoying it or not, I would have had to go. But I think that it's not, again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad film. I very rarely say something from Pixar is terrible. Yeah. I think it's a combination of perhaps me just not being in the right mood, but also just not aimed at me. And that's fine. Like not every Pixar movie has to, hit a note with me. And I like most of them, like especially the softer ones. I really like Inside Out. I really liked Coco.
Yeah,
that was a Pixar one, right? Yeah, like I really like, and they're softer, more emotional films with heavier notes, and they're fine. Like I quite like them. But yeah, I think it was the combination of like the subject matter. While I know it's important in terms of like your emotional health while you go through puberty as a young woman, like it's important. I can obviously know the value of the story. I think it's great that it's a female director with probably a large female team on the story team.
Is, yeah, they have a side doc about it.
Yeah. So like Domi Shi is the director. Yep. And she in less than 10 years has gone from a story artist on Inside Out, The Good Dinosaur, a storyboard artist on Incredibles 2, and then Toy Story 4, and now she's directing a film. Like that's awesome. And I knew immediately within the first, 15 minutes, because I didn't know all this going in. I just knew, I was like, this is great. And I can tell that rightly so, it's a female director. And I can appreciate the importance of it. My first thought was to like, if I can get through it, was to like recommend it to my sister. My niece is maybe not old enough. I don't know. To like, again, like your daughter to really grasp all the levels. Exactly. But there's certainly a lot of like funny, emotional friend relationship stuff that I think would be important. Yeah. And I like the fact that it wasn't that when she got angry or whatever, that she turned into the panda, but it was whenever she felt like an extreme emotion. Doesn't matter whether that was happy, sad, anger, doesn't matter. And again, like that kind of stuff was well handled. But there's two things about it that kind of had me checking out. The first one was like just the unrelatability. And that's just nothing other than the fact that I don't have a partner. I don't have kids. I don't have even my niece. I'm not super close with them. So like I don't have a lot in my life to relate it to. And secondly, and this is, I think, a generational thing. This is going to make me sound like an old man. I missed so much information in the first 20 minutes or more because it was thrown in front of me so fast. It's like there's all these jokes and all these little subtle moments, and they go by you so bleeding fast. Like I would have to, like they pause on like stickers. She says something important. I am my own woman. I do whatever I want. And cut to like, her cool, flute case with like
Yeah.
stickers on it. And there's jokes there, except for they don't pause long enough for me to even read one of them.
Yeah.
And that just happens like rapid fire, like constantly. And unless you are used to, as I'm sure most of the younger generations are, consuming media at that speed, it just like, I didn't get any of the jokes. Like, I just like, this is just noise. To me, the first 20 minutes, 15 minutes felt like a YouTube video when they get annoying and I want to shut them off.
Sure.
Like I spend a lot of time playing Minecraft, and I will often have to look up something, like I have to learn how to make a farm, or I want to learn or see a review of like a mod or something like that for the other podcast. And the very first thing that I do to check out of a tutorial or a review is if that person that's doing the review is speaking so fast I can't understand them, I'm done. Like, I'm just out.
Yeah.
And it drives me crazy. Like, the most important thing at the beginning of your video is like your name, what you're planning on covering, and what it is, that I'm going to be in for. And if you say that so fast that I can't understand any of it, I'm just done. I immediately just like dislike, gone, next video. I try to find somebody usually I try to find a creator that I'm at least familiar with, that I know I can listen to. And even then it can be sometimes a stretch. And so I did find that it's got this rapid fire, everything is flashing all of the time. The scenes are shorter. There's a lot of cuts. I'm trying to like, oh, that's a really cool design. No, I can't see that design anymore because they're no longer on it. Like they have these moments where it used to be a much more of a subtle pause, like a pause on a background character, like those moments you have when like Ratzenberger, doing a voice of something in a Pixar film. And there's that beat where like they hold on the joke, I am the underminer. And it's like, this is great. And that was like whenever they do stuff like that in this film so far, again, I'm only watched the first 40 minutes. It's so fast. Like if you blink, you miss it. And there were some things that I thought were funny. I was laughing mostly at the dad. Like there's this moment where, I can't remember the mother's name, but the mom is like all controlling, all everywhere, all the time. And Ming, I think is her name. Sandra Oh is the voice. And she puts donuts on the table for breakfast, but then won't let anybody eat them. And it's just like, why? Why are there donuts on the table if the only reason they're there is to tell your husband no? And like, that's the morning that Mei Mei finds out that she's a panda, and she shrieks and runs to the bathroom. And like the split second that Ming looks up from the table, dad scarfs a donut. Like just boom. Like it's, you have to have both seen the joke of no sugar, her slapping his hand, and be watching him to even catch it. And that I found really funny. And I'll ask this of you, because this was something else that I found a bit bothersome, was I found that the dad was like a throwaway character so far. He's pretty bumbling. He doesn't seem to be taking part in the family outside of just like supporting and doing whatever mom says, which is fine, but it's really a back seat. And I don't know if I really enjoyed that. Does that come around? Like, does he end up having like a heart to heart with Mei Mei, or like there's some, I got, just before I stopped watching, there was a softer moment where like he was telling her everything's gonna be fine. We'll get through this. Don't worry. Like he was trying to be reassuring. And I thought, okay, good. Like he's not just like a suck it up and get through it kind of dad. He's a little bit more down to earth in that way, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, he's involved.
But
he gets involved a
he
little
does
bit
get
more.
involved.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think the slight spoiler, but not really. They established.
Well, I don't care about spoilers. We'll warn the listeners, but I don't care.
But he doesn't take a back seat, but he's still not as important as eventually Miley's mom, Miss Lee's own mother coming, so Miley's grandmother, and their aunts coming. So there's this whole force of aunts plus grandma that come. They have an important part too. But I do recall at least 2 moments where it's like Miley and dad. So there are those moments. Obviously, the mass bulk of it is all the female identifying relationships, which is, totally fine. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, of
but
course.
to your point, I think the dad's still in there. He's not just there to just be a quiet donut eater. Like he has emotional value to the story as well. Back to your point though, it is really true. I will say this, and just thinking about it now, like Finding Nemo is one of those films sometimes you can put on because like there is a little bit of like amped up stuff, but some of it is just like you're watching the fish talk and swim, and there's a lot of openness, and it feels like there's well, a lot more breathing and longer takes. I thinking back on Turning Red and possibly why Emmy has returned to it as much at her very young age is because of the speed at which things come at you in Turning Red. So I do agree. I think Turning Red hopefully resonates really well also with younger people, especially in that tween. I mean, like if you think about like we talk about over and over again, I just come on for the same shows over and over again, cartoons and our attention spans. But it's true, your attention span is driven in so many different ways. So a movie like this, I feel like, does a pretty good job of keeping up with, I think, some of their target demo and their attention span. Like the boy band craze to me is over, but I guess there's still some big boy bands out there.
I didn't catch the whole 2002 vibe thing either. I didn't see or hear them indicate to me that this is taking place in the early
Yeah, it
2000s.
was in
Like
that
I just
first, like it was literally in the first 3 minutes. I think they show a picture and it says 2002 or whatever.
and
Yeah,
that's what I mean
speedy.
by if your audience is missing important
Right.
information like that, then you're going through your beats too
Yeah.
quickly. And that's the kind of thing, because I was just kind of rolling my eyes like, boy, like haven't we done boy bands? Like sure, like this is like I get it. And my thought was like, okay, well whoever's directing this obviously would have had, like, they're probably around my sister's age, which means that they would have been like into boy bands when they were a teenage girl. And this all makes sense. They're telling a story that they know. And so like I wasn't necessarily dismissing it, but I'm just like, I've seen it
Yeah.
before. And that's I think where I started to check out. And I will personally say, like, I know that my attention span is shorter now than it was at the beginning of the pandemic because of how much screen time, specifically how much short media screen time that I have been consuming over the last 2
Right.
years, 3 years. And I know, because I find it harder, unless it's a really good movie, I find it harder to get through films now without pausing and taking a break, doing the dishes, like just getting up. I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of getting up, but other times it's just like I'm just not that engaged, especially if it's something that I've seen before.
Yeah.
I will get sucked into series. Like I remember one evening watching like 2 or even 3 episodes of Vikings Valhalla. So that's like 3 hours in a row. And I mean, obviously, bathroom breaks and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, hour-long chunks in series are a little bit more digestible. Even if I am watching them right in a row,
Right.
there's an option, I think, to break. Whereas when you're looking at this, and when I heard the plot point of she has until the next moon or new moon before she can do this ritual to contain her panda, which to me seems like that's a bad idea. That's like bottling up your emotions. That seems like a terrible idea. So I'm assuming it's probably not going to happen. But then the idea of a few days before that, this 4-star boy band is going to have a concert. So she has to then suppress and control her emotions in order to try to convince her parents to let her go to this concert. And I just saw the rest of the plot of this Disney Pixar movie unfold in my head. Like, well, I know what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
Like she's going to suppress her emotions, learn a lesson that's not very healthy. Eventually she'll end up going to this concert with her friends, because if she doesn't get to go, then that's a stupid like shitty thing to do to this kid in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you kind of understand. And it's like, do I really want to watch another 20 or 30 minutes of this just so I can listen to watch a super long sequence at a boy band concert that I don't want to listen to? Because already the cringy singing from her and her friends in the movie it was enough to me. I almost started skipping
Oh,
stuff.
I love all those little bits. It's so cute that
it's cute, but like it's they're too long. Like sing a phrase or a verse, but when you start doing like the whole song and into the chorus and there's a dance thing, that's where I can't identify it,
Yeah,
right? That's where
sure.
I'm just
You
like,
didn't
okay,
get
I
the
got
reference. Yeah.
what you were trying to do in the first 10, 15 seconds of this, but now we're into like a minute and a half and I'm done. Like move
Yeah.
on. Because it's not adding anything
The
anymore.
friends though are
And
so
that
funny. Like I do.
they are funny. I don't remember which one is which, but the one that's angry all the
Oh,
time,
Priya, the
she's
one
just
that shows up and is like holding like the vampire book. No.
no
Oh, Abby.
Priya's Abby. She's the short brunette that's just like
Yeah,
"Rah!"
she's the one
all the
that's
time.
like a feral creature who screams, "Let's burn this thing down!"
Yeah.
Like her energy level is so funny to me. Like I love her. Yeah, she is. She's sort of like the
Yeah.
scene stealer a lot of times. Abby, yeah, and then Miriam
Yeah.
is like sort of the pseudo ringleader of the side best friend. She's the one who wears green. My daughter's like the green one, the yellow one,
Yes.
and the pink one. Is how
Yes.
she
Yeah.
identifies them. But they do a pretty good job with the characterizations of that stuff. I totally understand everything you're saying makes total sense too. By the way, as somebody who did
Yeah.
enjoy the film, those are a lot of the sort of like avenues in which the film is not going to fulfill. A little bit.
Yeah. And I want to say, like, really cool to see essentially an entirely female-led cast.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's her 3 or 4 friends, her mom. You mentioned that grandma and aunts come in later. Even the boys at school are like throwaway shot gag
The most
characters,
important
right? Like,
male
you know,
character is the quote unquote bully Tyler. So like that's the
right.
only
Exactly.
Not a love interest too, which is also very nice and valid for a film.
Nice to have. Yeah. I enjoyed some of the over the top animated sequences where like Mei Mei is under her bed realizing she has a crush on the dude behind the counter at the milk mart or whatever. Oh my God. She's drawing these goofy things like she can't even control herself and she doesn't know what's happening. She comes out of like a blackout and she's like, why is he a mermaid? I don't know. Like that kind of stuff I thought was very, very funny. And that again is just like, this is a female director who was a female artist at 14 who probably did stuff like this, right? Like there is a through line where like I can only imagine the story meetings at Pixar where all of the women that are in these story meetings are killing themselves laughing because they're like, I totally did that. I get it. And on to like some more positive stuff. I'm still getting used to it. Luca was the first that I saw of this kind of style from Pixar. This Turning Red is another one where they're really going against like all the capabilities that you can do with CG right now. They went really simple with a lot of stuff. So there's a lot of points where Mei Mei and her friends kind of remind me of a Wallace and Gromit. Like it's very simple, stylized designs, very round, tube-like legs. At the same time, they do a really good job of positive like body representation. Right. Like Abby, I think, is a little heavier as a kid. Mei Mei is kind of in between. You get the tall, skinny girl. There's frizzy hair, a little bit hippie, like all like the awkward stuff that happens when women are teenagers. And I think they did a great job of not having everybody look like, a Disney princess, which hasn't been happening for a while in Pixar films, but it was good to see because in this particular film, it wasn't as cartoony as something like Luca, where they're fish monsters and characters are like very boxy. Like, old women in Luca look like mailboxes. Like they're very cartoony, right? Whereas this is a little bit more realistic. And I think they did really well from a character design standpoint for Mei Mei and her friends and stuff like that. They're unique and yet they all kind of feel like they're part of the same, not world, but like the same ilk.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you say we punch out some pass or play?
Let's do it. So pass or play, if you're not familiar in the past, it's just my way of like lightning rounding a bunch of films or things. You either want to play them or you're going to pass on them. Sometimes I do it with trailers. Sometimes I do it with films I've seen. This week it was happenstantial. Speaking of like not having a good attention span, I realized I had such a backlog on all these lists of like movies I hadn't seen that I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's run. And I also just started to use this app called Letterbox. And that kind of, again, Mr. List, forced me to be like, man, I haven't seen like an actual new movie or a movie that came out in the last 5 years more than like 3 or 4 maybe. So I just started to try and knock some out. So happenstantially, ironically, they fell into two categories: Oscar Best Pictures, Doy, that's coming up, that's on your brain, and Ryan Reynolds movies. So yeah, I needed a little bit of like beef with my like hearty like artistic meals. A little bit of humor, a little bit of everything. So I'll start with the Ryan Reynolds films because I think those are more, probably more people have seen them, to be honest. Again, because it's American Oscars and whatnot. But I starting with the oldest, I came back to I never seen Deadpool 2, and I visited Deadpool 2, and honestly, I liked it. I remember at the time feeling like there was a lot of people who were very negative about it, or people being like, something about it. To me, I think it was just as good as the first one. There were certain plot things that I thought were better than the sort of simple first Deadpool film, but overall, I think from my memory, from the first to the second, like if you came for Deadpool 2 was great for that reason. So I'd play that one. Red Notice, which is a Netflix only film, with Dwayne Johnson and Gal Gadot and Ryan Reynolds. I'm going to say pass. And the problem here is, I think while it's a sort of a heisty film that also has elements of sort of treasure hunterness, it doesn't really push either of those two genres so much or make such a good lampoon of either of those genres to do anything. Like it's trying to be a jack of all trades for those things, and it doesn't do any of them particularly so well that I'm like, oh, it really sticks with you. And I love Dwayne Johnson. This almost became a Dwayne Johnson film because, or list, because I started this whole thing by watching Jungle Cruise. So, but then Ryan Reynolds took my heart and he led me down this path. So, anyway, pass on Red Notice. I would say play on Free Guy, which is now on Disney Plus. I'd say play because it's actually kind of a lot of fun. I think a lot of the references that they kind of use as jokes can be a bit much. It worked for me. I know it's not going to work for everybody, but for a non-R-rated Ryan Reynolds, I think it used a family-friendly Ryan Reynolds in the best possible way you can, which is really tough. Because when I get to my last Ryan Reynolds, The Adam Project, which just came out on Netflix, I'm gonna say pass. And here's the thing: last night when I was watching it, I was like, I'm gonna recommend this to Joel. I'm gonna say play. Felt like something that we collectively would enjoy: time travel, sci-fi, Ryan Reynolds. But like the more I watched it, and by the end, I was like, this is a film that like I'm gonna kind of like forget about. Like it's not, nothing's really gonna resonate with me. I'm not gonna really be thinking about elements of this film for an extended period of time. And for that reason, although I enjoyed it, I don't think it's necessarily something I would rush to see again or even recommend. So I just say pass on the Adam Project, unfortunately. Cool cast though, really cool cast if you look it up. And then Oscar Best Pictures, total 180 as far as tone and humor, which there's lacking. I only have seen 4 of the 10. My God, 10 Best Pictures, and intend to try and see Power of the Dog and West Side Story, but I have not seen either. Instead, I've seen Nightmare Alley, which is the Guillermo del Toro. It's a remake. I didn't realize this until I was on Letterboxd and it popped up. I was like, Nightmare Alley didn't. Oh, Nightmare Alley is just a remake. So it even lowered that film a little bit more. Stylistically, it's beautiful. Cast wise, great. Acting, good. But it wasn't. Nothing was super resonating with me as far as Nightmare Alley is concerned. And Shape of Water didn't get me either. So if you love Shape of Water, you might actually really love Nightmare Alley because it's actually far darker and more tragic. If that your vibe. But for me, it's a pass. Don't Look Up is a pass. It's kind of a really big. It's a mad, 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 mad world rat race slash um, uh, Doctor Strangelove sort of thing. They have so many actors, doing so many little bits and jokes, and Leonardo DiCaprio's in it, and Jennifer Lawrence are anchoring it, and the premise, of course, is incredibly terrifying to me. The satire of it is also very terrifying. But other than that, for an Adam McKay film who does really good job with balancing humor and satire, like he did for The Big Short, this one just fell short for me. See what I did there? So it's a pass. I would play Drive My Car. It is a 3-hour long film. It is very dry. It's a foreign language film, and you have to read it. But I do think that other than maybe I'm wanting to cut it down by 20 minutes, otherwise it's a good film. Now it falls into one of those categories of like really good film you watch once, you may think about it, or you might carry parts of it with you, and then you never see it again. So it's definitely rings of like best picture were very important. But it is really good. It's really well written. There's a lot of opportunities. Speaking of like speed of turning red, this film it does a really good job, I think, of letting acting, cinematography, all these things breathe, and really give them room in the silence to tell story as much as talking. And I thought that that was obviously something that, in our rat-a-tat-tat world, was really good, especially since, I just talked about Don't Look Up, and that was incredibly rat-a-tat-tat. So I would play Don't or Drive My Car. And lastly, Dune is probably the splashiest of the best pictures. I think Dune's just probably not wouldn't get best picture because they're going to wait to see if they can land. I think the trilogy is what they've announced. They're going to do 3 of them. I didn't read the books, so I came to Dune pretty blind. But overall, it was really beautiful. I thought cinematography was good. The acting was very. It felt like everybody was acting through the same filter. And the whole thing felt very filtered because it's on a desert planet, so it's very gray and sandy. But overall, huge cast of people, and lots of things in play, very rich. They don't hold your hand for a lot of things, which in modern day, I think might turn some people off. Other people will probably be turned on because they don't have to know every single facet of this universe right away. But I'd say play Dune. It's definitely got enough epic to it, and it's definitely got enough sweeping sci-fi that's really cool, and the acting's good. Jokes, I think there's maybe 5 jokes in Dune, maybe less. So if you're looking for like a fun time, pair Dune maybe with one of those Ryan Reynolds films to give yourself a little bit more boost in comedy. But not a lot of smiling in Dune either. But it was good. So I would say I ended up with 50-50 there. 50% Ryan, 50% best pictures to play. So that would be where I land currently.
So I can rip through these pretty fast. Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool 2. I know I didn't like it. Red Notice, didn't finish it, thought it was crap. Free Guy, watched it. I'll give it a play, but I don't think they stick the ending. I did talk about it on the
Agreed,
show,
yeah.
but as you mentioned, it's forgettable. I don't remember what I said about it on the show. Right? It probably started off really strong and then just couldn't stick the ending. The Adam Project, I had teetered with maybe pressing play on that, but I will take your advice and probably not, because when Red Notice, Free Guy, and the Adam Project all come out within the last year or two. Granted, I know that there's probably some pandemic delays with the releasing of some of these films. When an actor is in that many movies released that close together, none of them are good. It's kind of par for the course. I tip my hat to Dwayne Johnson and his entrepreneurial bulldozer of a career. I like him. I don't tend to like his movies. I find that they just cookie cutter jam them out as fast as possible.
Agreed.
And I agree with you. Red Notice should have been a farce. If they should have leaned into Red Notice like Jumanji or something.
Sure. Yeah.
But it
agreed.
took itself too seriously.
Yep.
And the only thing that I kept watching on Red Notice is because I have an unabashed crush on Gal Gadot, so I will watch her read the phone book. So I was watching Red Notice purely for her until Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne Johnson, not their characters, because they're never in character. They're just Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne Johnson
and everything
in this film.
they're in. Yeah.
And when they went to the jungle set, I was just like, oh, welcome to the warehouse with sand and palm trees that's supposed to look like a jungle somewhere. No, I am done. I am not. And if they had done that like it was like a real farce, then it probably would have been fine. But yeah, not interested. Oscar Pictures. Dune is available to stream in Canada on Crave on March 18th. It's one of the reasons I resubbed to Crave, not just for Picard this month, but also because Dune is available soon for me, and I'm going to watch it. Drive My Car, probably not something I'm going to pick up. Don't Look Up, tried, hated it. Not my favorite thing. I was interested in Leonardo DiCaprio's straight man character until he started cheating on
Yep,
his wife. And I was
exactly.
like, nope, I'm out. I can't, I don't respect anybody in the film. And if you don't give me someone to attach my
Agreed.
story to identify with, then I'm done. And Jonah Hill, I want to throw from a moving train. Like I don't tend to like modern comedies. It's not a secret on this show. Nightmare Alley, I'll probably say pass only because Del Toro is a very specific mood that I have to be in. I respect him as a filmmaker. I really like Pan's Labyrinth, but again, I didn't like reading the whole thing. That kind of stuff was difficult. So there's stuff like that I can either take or leave with Del Toro. But again, respect him as a filmmaker. It just doesn't necessarily make my kind of film.
Oh, crafted beautifully again. Yeah, but the arrow didn't hit me on that one.
Moving on into the Internet Minute, which is, of course, brought to you by you, dear listener. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you're getting value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite to the member-only Discord server that's shared with my personal Discord and, of course, the Twitch members from my streaming channel. And it will get you access to the Barista Cut audio sessions. So at any level, you get access to those bonus sessions because we've hit that goal. A special thanks to our new bean counter, Smurf588, for sponsoring this episode. Thanks so much, Smurf. I really, really appreciate it. Patron count is at 26. That is steady on from last week. If you would like to be number 27, visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Our goal is to try to add a new member every week. So you could be number 27. Who knows? I have a very short pick. It requires a little bit of watching, but things that I think you will enjoy and perhaps get a small hit of serotonin that you will no doubt need these days. Penally Watches Telly is a TikTok creator focusing on their husky mix. I am definitely a dog person, and although I would never choose a husky, this account is pretty fun and pretty different from most like husky social media memes that you'll see. Most of the time you'll get some husky chowing and yowling and vocalizing and being basically stubborn, and their owners find this funny. I find it annoying. However, Penally, the husky in this video, watches television, and the owner will put various things on television, like an advertisement for like home insurance or health insurance or something, where a dog is jumping on a trampoline, and this husky, just like the emotions that wash over this dog's face when you watch something like that, it is absolutely hilarious. Like you can see the wheels turning. It's like, that looks like fun. Wait, he's not just jumping around. There's a thing that makes him jump higher, and you can see the dog kind of look around, be like, that's a thing that exists. Where can I get one? Like it just, the immediate, like the possibilities are just running through this dog's head. It's so funny to watch. Same thing with like nature docs, where they'll put on some nature documentary and there's like a something's in danger, and the dog will kind of like perk up and just like watch TV. Like what's going to happen? It's like with us watching television drama, watching animals run around on screen. The dog is just like, what's going to happen next? Can we put on the next episode, Mom? Like, I don't know what's going on. It's just fun. It's just really, really fun. And it's not, like I said, the memey, howly husky videos that you're used to. It's pretty funny. There are some like cringy videos where like they've got the dog dressed up in like sparkly tutus and stuff. So skip those. Just watch the ones that look like the dog is on the couch watching the television. Bloody hilarious. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can get more information about the show and links to some of the things that Brockett and I talked about at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod. I know you, of course, can email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or follow the show by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube, really wherever you can find a podcast. Word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. Just tell a friend about the Citadel Cafe and where they can go to listen to it. You can also leave a rating or a review on your platform of choice, Spotify, iTunes, whatever. That gets us into more ear holes and helps us grow the podcast as well. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I am up to online, including my illustration and design portfolio at joelduggan.com. You can check out my other podcast all about Minecraft at thespawnchunks.com. This past week, Pixelriffs and I talked about the first appearance of the Allay in the Bedrock beta. That's a new mob in Minecraft. And of course, you can follow me at Joel Duggan on social media. I'll point you towards twitch.tv/Joel Duggan, where I'm streaming every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And this week, I actually put up a bonus stream. So I was online for a couple hours yesterday on Tuesday. So check that out at twitch.tv/Joel Duggan. We'll see you there. Brockett, where can people find you online?
Find me on social at TheCatVolver or CatVolver in various gamer tags.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.